The first thing Cole heard when he stepped onto the neutral platform was a gun being cocked. Not a human gun. Something bigger. Something that hummed like a power line in a storm and smelled like ozone and old iron. He stopped walking. "State your designation and purpose," said the voice behind the gun. He turned slowly, hands open, the universal language of "I'm not worth killing." The soldier in front of him stood 2 heads taller than any person he had ever met. Her armor was black-green, layered like the scales of something ancient, and it caught the dim light of the station and threw it back wrong, too. Her helmet was off, which Cole noted was either a sign of supreme confidence or supreme contempt. He decided it was both. Her face was angular and severe, with markings along her jaw that looked like old scar tissue but moved faintly when she spoke, catching color. Not like amber or honey or any of the soft comparisons people reach for. Gold, the way the inside of a coin is gold and just as cold. Cole Navarro, he said. Diplomatic liaison. Earth Compact, 3rd seat. He paused. She did not lower the weapon. "I know what you are," she said. "I asked your purpose. I'm here for the resource negotiation. Same as everyone else on this platform." He glanced around at the ring of other aliens seated along the perimeter. Vethkai traders, a pair of Larundi engineers who had not looked up. "They are not the concern," I gathered. Her weapon arm did not waver. Cole noticed she was breathing at a different rate than he would expect, slower, even. The way predators breathe when they are not in a hurry, because they do not need to be. "You are human," she said, and the word came out the way someone says the name of a sickness they have been warned about. "Guilty. Humans destroyed the Varath station 11 months ago. Humans also built it," Cole said. "So we've got a complicated relationship with our own infrastructure." The gold eyes narrowed. Not anger. Assessment. Her name, he would learn later, was Sevala, a name that translated roughly from her language into something like the edge that holds. Among her people, the Karath names were not given at birth. They were earned at the end of a soldier's first real war. Hers had been earned at 19, in a conflict that lasted 6 years and consumed 4 of the 7 inhabited moons of her system. She had been the last soldier standing on the 3rd moon when the ceasefire was called. Not because everyone else had died, though many had, but because she had refused the retreat order and held the communications relay alone. Cole did not know any of this yet. What he knew was that the gun was still pointed at his face, and that the woman holding it had not blinked in an unsettling amount of time. "The negotiation begins in 3 hours, he said. "I'd like to get something to eat before then. If you're planning to shoot me, I'd appreciate you doing it now so I don't spend the next 3 hours anticipating it." A pause, the weapon lowered, not because she had decided he was safe. He understood that clearly. She lowered it because she had decided he was not worth the forms she would have to file. He exhaled. "You are assigned to Sector 9, she said. "I am assigned to Sector 9. I will be watching you. Lucky me." "It is not luck," she said. "It is a threat." Cole picked up his bag from where he had set it on the floor. His hands were steady. He was proud of that. "Understood, soldier. Commander, she." He looked back at her. Commander Sevala. The way her chin lifted, barely a centimeter, almost nothing told him he had gotten the pronunciation wrong and she had decided not to correct him. He filed that away for later. He walked toward the Sector 9 corridor and he did not look back, because the one thing every diplomatic training program agreed on was this. He turned the corner and then leaned against the wall for exactly 4 seconds, breathing through his nose. Then he straightened his jacket and went to find something to eat. Behind him, down the corridor, Sevala watched the empty space where he had been standing. Humans, she had been told, were soft, fragile, built for comfort and negotiation and the careful avoidance of anything that might damage them. She had read their biology, reviewed their combat records, analyzed their tactical decisions across 43 known conflicts. She had not read about this particular type of human. The one who flinched, she had seen it, the fraction second tightening in his jaw, and then spoke anyway. Slowly, with something she could only describe as patience, dressed up as humor. She had met soldiers who were not afraid of her. They were usually the ones who hadn't seen what she could do yet. She had not, in 11 years of service, met someone who was clearly afraid and chose to stay calm in the same breath. She turned back to her post. The negotiations would begin in 3 hours. She would be watching Sector 9. She did not examine at that moment what else she might be doing. Cole found food at a vendor run by a Hresh who smelled like engine grease and was deeply suspicious of his credit chip, but accepted it anyway. He sat at a low table, ate something that tasted like lentils if lentils had ambitions, and opened his briefing files on his tablet. He got through approximately 2 paragraphs before he realized he was thinking about gold eyes instead of trade routes. He closed the tablet, opened. Read the same paragraph 3 times. 3 hours was not a lot of time. He needed to know every Karath position on the mineral rights dispute. He needed to know which of their allies on this platform were soft commitments and which were locked. He needed to know the 2 points where a creative offer could move the room. What he did not need was to be thinking about the woman who had pointed a weapon at him and then looked at the space he'd left like she was. He ate the rest of his lentil ambitions in deliberate silence. What he did not know, what he could not have known, was that 30 meters away, behind a wall that smelled of recycled air and old conflict, she read it in 4 minutes. Then she read it again. He had been in 9 negotiations. 8 of them had reached agreement. The one that hadn't had ended because the other party's government collapsed mid-session, which his file noted dryly had been not attributable. She set the file down. She picked it up again and looked at the photograph. He looked exactly like he had in the corridor. Open face. Eyes that were doing more work than his expression admitted. The small, controlled thing at the corner of his mouth that was not quite a smile and was not quite something else. She closed the file. The negotiations would begin in 3 hours. She had work to do, she did the work. She thought about the photograph twice more, which she noted and set aside and did not think about again until later, when it was too late to pretend. The negotiation room was a long oval table that nobody had bothered to make comfortable on purpose. The lighting was the universal gray of facilities designed for function and contempt for aesthetics. Cole took his seat on the human side himself, a junior analyst named Pete, who was 23 and visibly terrified, and their station assigned. The Karath delegation filed in across the table. Savala was not at the table. She was at the door. Cole processed this. She was security for their delegation, not a negotiator, which reshuffled several of his assumptions, and then he processed. Cole had read his file. Dravon looked at Cole the way you look at a broken appliance you're being asked to repair when you already know it's not fixable. We will begin with the mineral rights in the Asha corridor, Dravon said, without preamble and without acknowledgement. The Karath position has not changed. Cole nodded. The Earth Compact's position has also not changed, but I'd like to understand the Karath reasoning more fully before we establish whether those, not the soft color shift Cole had seen on Savala. These ones moved like a weather front. No, are you implying bad faith? Dravon said. I'm implying that the Asha corridor dispute has been ongoing for 8 years, that 3 different sets of negotiators have declared it. Cole set his hands on the table. Which suggests to me that the people actually doing the work found a way to coexist, that the people at tables like this one keep overriding. Oris. The room held its breath. At the door, Sevala's posture did not change, but the markings along her jaw, the ones Cole had noticed in the corridor, shifted once, barely visible, a faint blue pulling through the green. Pete, who was junior and terrified, but also unexpectedly observant, saw it. He said nothing. He wrote 1 word in the margin of his notes. The word was interesting. The session ran 2 hours over. Nothing was resolved, which Cole had expected, but the shape of what could be resolved had come into view, which was the actual work of day 1. Dravon had stopped dismissing Cole's points by the end of the 2nd hour. That was not agreement. It was something smaller, the moment when the other side stops performing contempt and starts actually listening. Cole had learned to read that shift away. A sailor reads a change in wind. You do not celebrate it. You note it and you adjust your heading. He was walking back through the Sector 9 corridor when Savala fell into step beside him, not behind him. Beside him, which was a different thing. You did not concede the Eastern Grid access, she said. No. Dravon expected you to. I know. Cole kept walking. That's why I didn't. She was quiet for a long moment. Their footsteps matched in rhythm without either of them choosing it. He will be more difficult tomorrow, she said. Yes, you are prepared for that. It was not a question, but it wasn't quite a statement either. It was something in between that her language apparently had room for and his didn't. I'm prepared for it, he said. She stopped walking. He stopped a step later and turned. She was looking at him with those gold coin eyes and the expression she'd had in the corridor. Not warm, not hostile, something more careful than. The expression of someone taking a measurement. Why do you do this? She said. Negotiate. Your people have the firepower now. In this sector, at least. Cole considered several answers. Gave her the true one. Because the last time we used the firepower, we got Vereth Station. He paused. I'd rather be the kind of people who find the third option. Her marking shifted. Blue again. Brief. Gone. There is often no third option, she said. There's almost always a third option, he said. We're usually just too tired or too angry to look for it. She held his gaze for a moment that stretched 2 seconds longer than comfortable. Then she turned and walked back the way they had come. Cole watched her go. He thought about the thing Pete had written in his notes. He thought, yeah. He thought, do not do anything stupid, Cole. He thought, right. He went back to his quarters and read the briefing files he had failed to read before. All of them this time, straight through, with full concentration. He got through every page. He only thought about Gold Eyes twice. He considered that a personal victory and went to sleep. The second day of negotiations started with an explosion. Not a metaphorical one, not a heated exchange, an actual pressure seal failure in the station's east wing that sent a shock wave through the corridors and dropped the lighting to emergency amber. Cole was halfway to the negotiation room when it hit. The floor lurched. He caught the wall. Pete went down on one knee and came back up with blood on his palm from the deck grating. You're fine, Cole told him. I know, Pete said, which was a lie, but a functional one. The corridor filled with bodies, delegates, staff, security personnel shouting in 4 different languages and 2 that Cole couldn't identify. Someone was trying to broadcast an all clear on a channel that was already saturated with alarm signals and producing nothing but static. He found her 30 feet ahead, moving against the flow of the crowd toward the east wing, which was the direction that everyone else was moving. He watched her for exactly 1 second. Then he followed her. Pete grabbed his arm. Cole, protocol is evacuation. Protocol is evacuation for diplomats, Cole said. She's security. She's going to the source. You are a diplomat. I know where the medical kit in Sector 9 is stored, Cole said. She might not. It was a thin reason, and Pete's expression said so. Cole followed Sivala anyway. She heard him behind her. He knew because her pace did not change, but her shoulders shifted, a fraction of recalibration, and she did not stop him. The east wing was bad, not catastrophically bad. 2 pressure seals had blown in sequence, and the section was venting atmosphere slowly enough that the station's backup systems were compensating. 1 of them was moving, 3 were not. Sevala assessed the scene in approximately 2 seconds and moved to the farthest figure, the one furthest from the backup oxygen venting, which was correct. The others were in the oxygen flow, buying time. The one farthest away was not. Cole went to the nearest of the 3 still figures, pulled the small med pack from the emergency panel on the wall, which was exactly where sector. But he had done the certification 3 times because he had a persistent and well-founded conviction that he was always going to end up exactly. Cracked ribs on the first figure. Breathing, but shallow. He stabilized, moved to the second. Sevala had the farthest figure upright and was moving her toward the oxygen vent. The figure was a young Karath female, station crew, who looked to be in shock but conscious. She hit the wall when the seal blew, Savala said. Not to Cole, just aloud, clinically, concussion. No spinal damage. How do you know the spinal damage part? I know what spinal damage looks like. The way she said it left no room for follow-up questions. Cole moved to the third figure. Human, male, older, station technician uniform. His pulse was there, but his breathing was wrong, too shallow, too fast, the kind that came from a chest impact that had done something structural. I need a level 2 compression support. The emergency panel should have one, panel 6 or 7 on this corridor. Savala was already moving. She came back in 12 seconds with a level 2 support pack that she had apparently ripped from the panel housing rather than unlocked, because she did not remark on this. Cole did not remark on this. He got the support on the technician and stabilized his breathing enough that the color came back to his face. Station medical arrived 4 minutes later. Then station security. Then the cascade of protocols and reports and authority figures that show up after crises to assert that the crisis has been managed. Cole sat down on the floor of the East Wing corridor, his back against the wall, and cataloged the ways his hands were shaking. He counted 4. You have medical training, she said. Certification? 3 rounds. Not the same thing. You ran toward the damage. So did you. She looked at him. He looked up at her. The emergency amber lighting was doing something strange to the gold of her eyes. Deeper, warmer, less like coins and more like the last inch. "You are a diplomat," she said. "I'm a person first," Cole said. "Diplomat second." Her markings shifted. He was learning to read them. Blue meant something. He did not know what yet. "The negotiation will be delayed," she said. "Yes. This changes the context of tomorrow's session." "It might actually help," Cole said. "Nothing recalibrates a room like everyone remembering that the station they're arguing over is the same station they almost died in." She was quiet for a moment. "That is a strange way to think," she said. "I know." He let his head fall back against the wall. "It works, though." She stood there for 3 more seconds, he counted. Then she reached down and offered him her hand. He took it. She pulled him to his feet with an ease that reminded him, briefly and vividly, of how much larger she was than him, how much stronger, how the armor. She let go the moment he was steady. "Thank you," he said. "It was efficient," she said. He smiled. The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a mirror of it. Something adjacent. Something that did not have a name in either of their languages yet. The delayed session reconvened the following morning. The room was different. Cole had predicted it, but prediction and reality have different weights, and the reality was heavier than he had expected. Drevon sat down without the performance of contempt he had arrived with on day 1. The junior Karath delegates, there were 3 of them, young, watchful, tracked Cole differently than they had before. Not with the measuring skepticism of the first session, with something that might have been, in a different atmosphere, called attention. Word had moved through the delegation. Cole understood. Word does. He had run toward the breach. He had stabilized 3 casualties. He had done it without being asked, without protection, without any tactical reason that served his own delegation's interest. Among humans, this would read as basic decency. Cole had read enough about the Karath to know what it read as to them. He did not leverage it. He had learned in 9 negotiations that the moment you try to spend goodwill as currency, it evaporates. You let it sit in the room. You let the other side decide what to do with it. "I'd like to return to the Eastern Grid access," Cole said. Specifically the rotation schedule that the on-site crews developed in year 3 of the dispute. Drevon looked at him. "That schedule was not formally ratified," Drevon said. "No," Cole said, "but it ran without incident for 22 months. Which means both sides' operational people trusted it enough to follow it. I'd like to understand what's in it that the people at this table don't trust." A pause. One of the junior Karath delegates leaned slightly forward. Drevon noticed. Cole noticed that Drevon noticed. "The schedule granted extended corridor rights to the human operation during the monsoon extraction window." Drevon said, "The Karath position is that those rights were temporary. The human operation position is that they were permanent," Cole said. "What I'm asking is whether the people who wrote the schedule understood them to be temporary or permanent, because if they understood them to be..." The room held the argument up to the light and looked at it from a different angle. Drevon said, "That would require access to the original operational logs." "I have them," Cole said. He opened his tablet. "I requested them from the Earth Compact Archive 3 weeks ago when I was assigned to this negotiation. I also requested the Karath operational logs from the same period, which your delegation provided in the pre-session materials, and I've done." "Would you like to see it?" A silence. Not the silence of a room holding its breath. The silence of a room exhaling. "Yes," Drevon said. Pete, who was sitting beside Cole and had been a model of professional restraint for the entire session, allowed himself one very small, very quiet. Oris, who had sat through enough of these to know when the room had turned, permitted himself one slow blink. At the door, Civola's markings held a color Cole would have called, if he had a word for it, something between still water and a door opening. The session ran 4 hours. At the end of it, they had a provisional framework, not a treaty, not a resolution. A provisional framework with 7 points and 4 areas of continued disagreement and 2 areas where both delegations agreed to review. Cole walked out of the negotiation room and stood in the corridor and thought, 2 down, 5 to go. Then he thought, she's going to be standing there when I turn around. He turned around. She was standing there. "You prepared the comparative analysis 3 weeks ago," she said. "Yes, before you arrived, before you knew who would be across the table." "I knew the dispute. I prepared for the dispute," Cole shrugged. "The people across the table are just the current version of the dispute. You work the problem." She looked at him with the careful measuring expression he was coming to recognize as her equivalent of what humans do with their eyebrows. "Among my people," she said, A warrior who prepares without knowing the enemy is considered overconfident. Among mine, Cole said, a negotiator who only prepares once they've seen the enemy is considered lazy. The edge of her mouth moved again. You are very strange, she said. I hear that a lot. From your enemies or your allies? Mostly from people who started as one and ended up as the other, Cole said. I've never been entirely sure which direction they traveled. She was quiet for a moment that he had stopped trying to measure. The provisional framework, she said, you know it will not survive the review process unchanged. I know. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to give both sides something to push against. That isn't the other side. He started walking. She fell into step. When people are arguing about clause 4 of a framework document, they're not arguing about whether the other side deserves to exist, that is a very small definition of progress. All progress is small, Cole said. Big progress is just a lot of small ones that nobody remembered to celebrate on the way. She considered this. They walked in step for a while. The station corridors were quieter now. The day shift thinning toward the transition hour when the ambient noise dropped to something human enough. If the framework holds through the review, if it becomes a ratified agreement, it will be the first formal resolution between Earth Compact. It will not make the distrust disappear. I know that too. Then, why does it matter to you? Cole thought about how to answer that, honestly. Because the people in the Asha corridor, he said, the ones who wrote the rotation schedule that nobody ratified, they figured it out. They were living next to each other, and they just figured it out. The treaty is just the paper version of what they already did. He paused. I think most of the actual work of peace happens between people who don't have the authority to make it official. My job is to catch up to them. Sevala did not respond for a long time. When she did, she said, I did not expect that answer. What did you expect? Something about human prosperity, resource access, political? All of that's also true, Cole said. But it's not why. She stopped walking. He stopped. She was looking at him with an expression he had not seen on her face before. Not the coin gold assessment. Not the careful measurement. Something that did not have armor in it. Something that existed in the space before armor gets put on. What do you want? She said. Not from the negotiation. From this. What do you, Cole Navarro, want? It was an honest question. The most honest thing she had said to him. He almost gave a careful answer. He could feel the careful answer forming. The diplomatic version. The professional safe harbor of a deflection dressed as depth. He said, you asked me that like you actually want to know. I do. He looked at her. She looked at him. He said, only half as a joke, maybe less than half, honestly. Right now, you. The corridor went very quiet. He expected the gun or the cold, or the door shutting behind her eyes. She reached up. She undid the first clasp of her armor at the shoulder. Cole went completely still. The clasp came free with a sound like a decision being made. Then the second. Then the lateral lock at her side. She did it methodically, without breaking eye contact, the way she did everything, like she had assessed the situation, found it was not going. The chest plate came away from her frame, and she held it in one hand at her side like it weighed nothing, which it probably did to her. She was wearing a plain undershirt beneath it. Her arms were bare to the shoulder. The markings on her jaw continued further than Cole had been able to see, down her neck, along her collarbone, across her left arm to the wrist. They were shifting now, slow and continuous, through colors he had not seen in them before. Warm ones. Uncertain ones. I was not made to be wanted, she said. I was made to hold the line. Cole did not move. Holding the line and being wanted aren't mutually exclusive, he said. Her markings moved. I know, she said. I am only recently learning that. She set the armor piece against the wall. She kept walking. Cole walked beside her. Neither of them spoke for a long time, and neither of them needed to, and the corridor held them both in its quiet, and the station turned. Sivala did not return to full armor the next morning. She wore the shoulder plates and the leg guards, the pieces that protocol required for active security assignment. But the chest plate, the central piece, the largest, the one that covered most of her torso, and made her look carved from something permanent. Nobody in the Kareth delegation mentioned it. Nobody from the human side noticed except Pete, who noticed everything and had the wisdom to say nothing. Oris noticed and was simply pleased in the way that very old and very experienced people become pleased by small, unexpected rightnesses in the world. He said nothing during the morning session. He ran his part of the negotiation with the same careful, patient, structured methodology he brought to every session, working the Eastern Grid. It was technical. It was detailed. It was the kind of work that looked like nothing from the outside, but was actually everything. Dravan was different in this session. Not softer, not more agreeable, different in the specific way that a door is different once someone has put their hand on the knob. He pushed back, hard, on 3 separate points. But he pushed back with specifics, with counter-proposals, with the operational log data that Cole had tabled the day before, annotated in Kareth notation with 17 flags. He had read it overnight. He had not expected to need to read it. He had read it anyway. Cole recognized this as the negotiation working and kept his expression completely neutral. During the midday break, Cole stood at the narrow window at the end of the Sector 9 corridor and looked out at the platform's exterior view. Savala came to stand beside him. He had not heard her approach. He had stopped being surprised by that. Dravan flagged the secondary access points, she said. I know. He would not have done that if he intended to reject the framework. I know, you are pleased. It was not quite a question, but it was reaching toward one. I'm cautiously not displeased, Cole said, which is as close to pleased as I get mid-negotiation. She looked out the window at the dark. I want to tell you something, she said. He waited. I was assigned to this platform because our command believes the negotiation will fail. They wanted a senior security presence here to manage the fallout, she paused. I was told to observe the human liaison and assess whether he was a threat. Cole looked at her, and, he said, and I assessed that you are not. Good. But I also assessed that you are something our command did not think to account for in their models. What's that? She was quiet for a moment. Effective, she said, in a way that does not look like effectiveness from the outside. They were watching for aggression or manipulation or political leverage. They did not anticipate someone who simply did the work. Cole leaned against the wall. That's the trick. Most people are watching for the weapon. They don't notice the preparation. It is not a trick, she said. A trick implies performance. What you do is not performance. He looked at her. She was still looking at the dark outside the window, but her markings were doing the warm, uncertain pattern he had started to recognize, the one she... My command will receive my assessment report tomorrow, she said. I have written it 3 times. The first version said, the negotiation had a low probability of success. The second said it had an uncertain probability. The third, she paused, the third says, I believe it will succeed, and that I recommend full delegation support for the provisional framework. That's a significant change in one day, he said. You stabilized 3 people in the East Wing without armor or weapons or any tactical position, she said. Because it was the right thing to do, and you knew how. She finally looked at him. My people respect efficacy, not ideology, not eloquence. What works? You work, Cole Navarro. You work in ways I was not briefed to expect. He met her eyes. You changed your report because of that, he said. I changed my report because it became inaccurate, she said. I do not submit inaccurate reports. But the way she said it, the slight added weight on the second sentence, the deliberate shift of emphasis told him the first sentence was also. Both things were true at once. He was learning that about her. She held more than one true thing at a time without needing to resolve them. Thank you, he said. It is accurate, she said. I know. Thank you anyway. Her markings held the warm, uncertain color for a long time. Then she said, tell me about the third option. He blinked. What? You said yesterday that there is almost always a third option, and that people are usually too tired or too angry to look for it. She turned to face him fully. You tell me about the times you found it. Specifically, I want to understand the pattern. Cole looked at her for a moment. Then he slid down to sit on the floor, back against the wall beneath the window, long legs stretched out in front of him. She looked at him. Then she folded herself down to sit beside him, not against the wall, facing outward, the way a sentry sits, able to see both directions, close enough that her shoulder was a few inches from his. The Callus Station dispute, Cole said, 4 years ago. 2 mining consortiums, both claiming extraction rights to the same deep core vein, both with valid documentation, both willing to go to arbitration, which would have taken 3 years and resulted in one of them getting everything and the other getting legal. The vein ran across a geological boundary that both sides had charted differently. which meant both sets of documentation were accurate for their mapped boundary, but both maps were wrong about where the boundary actually was. He, not attached to either consortium. She remapped the boundary. The vein turned out to be 60% larger than either side had accounted for. There was enough for a joint operation. Savala considered this. They had been arguing about a thing that did not exist as they understood it, she said. Most conflicts are. A long pause. The second time, she said. He told her about the second time. And the third. She asked questions, precise, technical, focused on the specific turning points, the moments where he had seen the third option before the room did. She did not offer approval or encouragement. She asked the next question. He answered it. She processed it and asked the next one. It was the most attentive conversation Cole had had in years. He told her 6 cases. She pushed on all 6. By the end, they had been sitting in the corridor for an hour and a half, and the ambient station lighting had shifted into its late-cycle dim. "You see the system," she said, "not the sides." "The sides are the system," Cole said. "They're just not all of it." She was quiet. He waited. "When I held the relay on the third moon," she said, "I was not trying to be a hero. I was trying to hold the system." She paused. "The evacuation needed the signal. The signal needed the relay. The relay needed someone to hold it. I was the available variable." Cole did not say anything. He let it sit. "I told no one that," she said. "For 11 years. I know," Cole said. "I can tell." She looked at him. How? "Because you said available variable," he said. "Not the right person or the only option. You saw yourself as a piece of the system that needed to be in a certain place. That's not how heroes describe themselves. That's how engineers talk about load-bearing elements." A long silence. "I have been described many ways," she said. "Not as an engineer." "You think in systems?" Cole said. "So do I. That's the thing." Her markings moved. The warm, uncertain pattern, but deeper now, wider across the lines at her collarbone. "That is the thing," she said quietly. They sat in the dimmed corridor for a little while longer, not saying much, not needing to. The system held them both. On the last day of the negotiation, the room was different again. Not the amber and dust different of crisis, the different that happens when people have been arguing in the same room for 6 days and have run out of performance. The formal postures had eased. The translators were faster, more fluent in the specific idioms this room had developed over the week. Even Dravon's markers, the Karath delegation had them too. Cole had learned, finer and slower than Savala's, were held at a resting neutral. The framework document was 73 pages. Cole had read all of it, 4 times. Dravon, he was now certain, had read all of it, also 4 times, possibly 5. The 7 points had become 9, 2 of which were entirely new and had emerged from the joint operational log review, small things, technical. You proposed a joint review board. Human and Karath appointees in equal number, with a neutral third-party arbitration role assigned to the Vethkai Trade Commission. Correct. The Karath position is that disputes should be resolved within the Karath judicial framework with human representatives present as observers. Cole. I understand that position, he said, and if I were advising the Karath delegation purely on domestic political optics, I'd probably support it. It looks like strength. He paused. But the operational log data shows that the disputes in the Asha corridor that escalated to formal arbitrations, all 11 of them, over 30. Not because they were wronged, because they could. Dravon was still. The 3 disputes that were resolved informally by the on-site crews, Cole continued, were resolved by the side that did not have judicial, and the side that did accept it, because the workers knew each other. They had the relationship. They trusted the process more than they trusted the authority. He looked at Dravon directly. Point 9 isn't about who has the power, Cole said. It's about building something both sides are willing to come to voluntarily. Because voluntary compliance is the only kind that actually holds. The room was quiet. Oris did not translate. Dravon had understood. The older Karath sat back in his chair. His markings were doing something Cole couldn't read. But Pete, who had been quietly brilliant for 6 days and had said almost nothing, leaned very slightly forward in a way that Cole recognized as Pete. Dravon said, a co-shared review board. Karath chair for disputes originating in Karath primary extraction zones. Human chair for disputes originating in human primary zones. Vethkai arbitration only when the co-chairs cannot reach resolution within 30 standard days. Cole's pulse did not change. His expression did not change. He said, we could work with that structure. Dravon looked at him for a moment. Then he looked at his junior delegates. Then he said, with the air of a man who has just moved a very heavy piece of furniture into a position he had previously claimed was impossible. The junior delegate on Dravon's left began typing. Pete began typing on Cole's right. Their fingers found the same rhythm without consulting each other. Cole looked at the window at the far end of the room, the one with the view of the platform exterior and the dark beyond it. Savala was at the door. Her markings were running steady and continuous in a color Cole had decided, somewhere around day 4, to call gold not the cold coin color, the color she held when something true was happening and she was watching it happen. He looked away from her before she could catch him looking. He did not succeed entirely. She had been watching him. He had been watching her. They both looked at the draft document on the table. The framework held. The session concluded at 1700 hours, platform time. Both delegations signed the provisional framework document, which was 31 pages with the amendments and the 9 points and the co-shared. Cole had not known Karath did that. He returned the handshake. Devon said in accented but clear compact standard, you did not yield what you could not recover. Neither did you, Cole said. Dravon almost smiled. The markers moved. It was close enough. Then the delegations filed out and the room emptied, and Pete sat down in his chair and put his head on the table for 30 seconds in the quiet. He walked out into the Sector 9 corridor. Savala was waiting, not at attention, not performing anything, just standing with the gold-running markings and the shoulder plates and leg guards and no chest plate, holding her helmet under one arm like... She took a slow breath. I submitted my report this morning, she said. I know. You told me you would. I added something to it, she paused. A recommendation that the Karath High Command consider a permanent diplomatic exchange post in the Asha corridor, staffed jointly. Cole went still. That's not a small recommendation, he said. No. Your command will push back, yes. They will push back for approximately 2 to 3 years, at which point the provisional framework will have been running without incident. She tilted her head slightly. I am very patient. Cole looked at her. Is that the only reason you recommended it? He said. The gold markings moved. No, she said. He nodded. The corridor was quiet. The station turned. In the Asha corridor, somewhere on the third moon of a system 2 hours distant at standard transit, a rotation schedule that nobody had ever. 2 crews, 2 sets of extraction equipment, 1 shared access lane that both sides had learned to use together before the people at tables like. Cole thought, the work is always already happening. You just have to catch up. He said, there's a platform transit leaving for Earth compact space in 2 hours. I know, she said. There is a Kareth carrier departing for home system in 4. I have reports to write. As do I. They looked at each other. Cole Navarro, she said. Savala. The edge that holds, she said, which was the translation, and which she had never said to anyone before because names given at the end of a war are, that is what it means. I know, he said. I looked it up. She exhaled. Something in it was almost laughter. Not quite, but the shape of it, the outline, the place where laughter would be if she had practiced it more. When the exchange post is approved, she said, it will require a human liaison. It will, Cole agreed. The role would require someone with existing knowledge of the Kareth delegation structure, familiarity with the operational dispute history, demonstrated ability to function under pressure in sector conditions. It would. I will recommend you, she said, if you want it. The last 3 words she delivered differently. Not with the clipped efficiency of the rest. Something softer in them, not vulnerable exactly. Just the way she had sounded in the corridor when she told him about the third moon. The way she sounded when something true came out before the rest of her could catch it. Cole said, I want it. She nodded. Then she said, 2 years is not very long. No, Cole agreed, it isn't. Her markings held the gold. He held her gaze. The transit would leave in 2 hours. The carrier would leave in 4. They were both still standing in the corridor when the platform announcement chimed the first boarding call, and neither of them moved, and the chime. This is the third option. It almost always was.